Welcome to Rising Parent. My name is Edna, and I am here to dive deep into the heart of family life. Today, we're exploring the power of communication within families. Effective communication is the cornerstone of strong, healthy relationships. It's how we connect, understand, and support each other. But let's face it, family life can get hectic, and sometimes those important conversations can fall by the wayside. In this episode, our guest speakers will dive deep into Tim's article and share practical tips and strategies to improve communication within your family. From active listening to resolving conflicts, we'll cover it all. So whether you're a parent of young children or a seasoned parent, this episode is for you. Let's dive in.
Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive with us. We're focusing on parents and childcare providers today. It's all about family communication. You know, that thing we're always saying is like so important.
Yeah.
Well, today we're diving deep into this article called Revolutionize Family Communication with One Simple Rule. It's by Tim from Rising Parent. I think we can all use a little boost in the communication department. So be sure to subscribe to the show and share this deep dive with any other parents you know. Now, to help us unpack all this, we've got two amazing guests joining us today, Edna and Tim. They've been working with children and families for over 20 years.
Wow.
I know, right? So they've definitely seen it all. And if that wasn't enough, they also founded Selfless Outreach. It's a mobile food bank, and they're doing incredible work. So if you want to see compassion in action, you can head over to selflessoutreach.org. And while you're there, be sure to hit that donate button.
That's amazing.
Okay, so the article doesn't sugarcoat things. It starts by saying that communication is really the foundation, like the core of a strong family. But then it dives right into how messy it can be, like with busy schedules and stress and those times when you feel like you're speaking different languages.
Oh, yeah, totally.
We all know communication matters, but the article doesn't just let us get away with good intentions. It pushes us to really think about how we actually communicate.
Yeah, not just what we say.
Right, exactly.
And the article highlights how good communication can actually help everyone in the family, like express themselves, build trust, and even handle conflict better. It's like the glue that holds everything together.
And when communication breaks down, as the article points out, things can get messy.
For sure.
Like misunderstandings pile up, and then resentment builds, and all of a sudden everybody feels like they're on separate planets.
Oh, I've been there.
Totally, we've all been there.
And that's where the article is what it calls one simple rule comes in. Active listening.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. We've all heard about active listening before.
Right, but the article really presented it in a way that just clicked for me.
Me too. And it's not just about like nodding your head and saying, uh-huh,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
It's about really tuning in and trying to understand not just the words, but the emotions behind them.
It's like the difference between hearing noise and actually listening to music. You might hear the notes, but are you really absorbing the melody or the rhythm or even the emotion that the musician is putting into it?
That's such a great analogy. So how do we apply that to like our families?
Yeah.
Well, the article actually gives some really concrete tips, like making eye contact and asking questions to, clarify things and summarizing what you've heard to make sure you're both on the same page. Oh, and one that really resonated with me, avoiding interruptions.
Oh, tell me about it.
Oh, I am so guilty of that one.
Me too. It's so tempting to just jump in with solutions, or offer our own perspective.
Right.
But the article stresses how important it is to let the other person really fully express themselves.
Yeah, and it makes sense, right? If someone feels like you're not really listening to them,
yeah,
they're going to shut down.
Or get defensive. Exactly, and the article gives this really powerful example of a teenager who's like feeling super overwhelmed with all this pressure at school. And a parent who's really actively listening doesn't just try to offer advice or dismiss their feelings, but instead they say something like, "It sounds like you're carrying a lot right now. Tell me more about what's making you feel stressed."
That is so much more effective than just saying, well, you just need to manage your time better.
Right.
It shows the teenager that you're really trying to get where they're coming from and not just trying to fix it.
Right, and that feeling of being heard and understood can make all the difference. It builds trust and opens the door for like a much deeper connection.
And the article also gives an example of like siblings arguing. Instead of each of them just yelling their side of the story, imagine if they took turns actively listening to each other. One sibling could say, hey, I feel left out when you guys go out without me. In hand. And the other responds with, I hear you. It hurts to feel left out.
Yeah.
I don't want you to feel that way.
Yeah.
That's so different from saying, well, you didn't want to come anyway.
Right. Active listening helps diffuse the situation, and it allows for like a much more empathetic response. It shifts the focus from blame and being defensive to understanding and connection. So it's fascinating. The article doesn't stop at just active listening. It acknowledges that active listening is kind of like a foundational skill, and then it adds on all these other techniques that like build on that foundation.
Okay, so active listening is the base, but what else can we add to our communication toolbox? I'm ready to level up.
Well, the article suggests something called dedicated family time. It's basically just like carving out those specific times for those focused family conversations. It could be like a weekly family meeting or a nightly dinner ritual or even just like 15 minutes before bed to connect.
That's interesting. I can see how that would be helpful, especially for families that are, busy and constantly on the go. It's like you're creating a designated space for those important conversations to happen so they don't get lost in the shuffle.
Exactly. And during those times, it's really crucial to create this atmosphere of openness and being non-judgmental. The article really stresses the importance of making sure everyone feels safe to share their thoughts and feelings, even if they're different from yours.
Yeah, that's so important. I think sometimes as parents, we tend to want to, fix things or offer advice. But sometimes what our kids really need is just to be heard and validated.
Absolutely. And that's where another technique from the article comes in. I statements. It's about shifting the focus from blame to expressing your own feelings and needs.
I've heard of I statements before, but I've always struggled with them. They feel a little forced sometimes.
I get that. They can definitely feel awkward at first. But the article actually breaks it down in a way that's really clear. So instead of saying you always leave your clothes on the floor, you could try, I feel frustrated when I see clothes on the floor. Because it makes the house feel messy.
Okay, that makes more sense. So it's about like owning your feelings and expressing them in a way that doesn't attack the other person.
Exactly. And the article gives a bunch of other examples to help you get the hang of it. The key is to just focus on your own experience rather than blaming or accusing the other person.
So dedicated family time, I statements, non-judgmental listening. Are you starting to see a pattern here?
I am. These techniques all kind of work together to create a culture of open and respectful communication within the family. It's like building a house, right? Active listening is the foundation. And then you add on these other tools and techniques to make sure that the structure is, strong and stable.
That's a great way to put it. But let's face it, even with the best communication skills, conflict is kind of inevitable.
Right.
Families are messy, emotions run high, disagreements happen, and the article acknowledges this. And it actually offers a framework for how to navigate those conflicts in a way that's constructive.
And no surprise here, active listening plays a key role in this too. It's about really trying to understand the other person's perspective, not just waiting for your turn to speak or defend your own position.
It's about putting down your sword and shield for a second and really trying to see things from their point of view. It's not always easy, especially when things are heated. But the article does offer some tips for staying calm in those heated moments, like taking deep breaths, pausing before you respond, and speaking a calm and respectful tone. The article stresses that how we communicate is just as important as what we actually say.
Right. And it also reminds us to stay focused on the issue and avoid those personal attacks. It's so easy to get sidetracked and start, throwing darts, But that only makes the conflict worse.
Yeah, for sure.
The article suggests that you should try and frame the conversation as, us against the problem, not me against you.
I love that. It shifts the whole dynamic from adversarial to collaborative.
Right. So instead of trying to win the argument, you're working together to find a self-agreement. That works for everyone.
And sometimes that means compromise. The article encourages families to brainstorm solutions together, really taking everyone's needs and perspectives into account. It's about finding that common ground and creating those win-win situations.
Right, and sometimes the best solution is just to apologize, even if you don't feel totally at fault. A sincere apology can go a long way in fixing those hurt feelings and getting everyone back on the same page.
Absolutely, and the article also emphasizes that it's important to teach these conflict resolution skills to kids too. It's about giving them the tools to navigate these disagreements effectively, throughout their lives.
Right. So instead of jumping in and solving all their problems, we can guide them to listen to each other, identify their feelings, and work together to find those solutions. We can empower them to become peacemakers in their own right.
And That's such a valuable gift to give them, isn't it? The ability to communicate effectively and resolve conflicts in a healthy way. It's essential for any relationship, both inside the family and out.
It's really striking me, as we've been talking about all these techniques, like active listening and dedicated family time and using I statements, how much of it really comes down to just setting an example?
Yeah.
Our kids are like, little sponges, soaking up everything they see and hear.
That's so true. The article actually talks about that too. Like, we can't just talk about good communication. We have to live it. Our kids are learning from us in every interaction,
Sure.
whether it's with them or with our partners or even, with that frustrating customer service rep on the phone.
Exactly. It's like that saying, don't worry that children never listen to you. Worry that they're always watching you. Because if we're constantly interrupting or like dismissing each other's feelings or resorting to sarcasm, that's what they're learning.
Totally. And it's not about being perfect.
Yeah.
Because none of us are, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. But the article does talk about, like, acknowledging when we make mistakes and apologizing to our kids when we fall short and showing them that even grown-ups are still learning.
Yeah. It takes the pressure off feeling like we have to be perfect.
Right.
And it shows them that it's okay to mess up, as long as we're trying to do better.
And the article suggests something else that I thought was really cool, involving kids in creating, like, family communication guidelines.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be complicated. You could just sit down together and brainstorm like some house rules for how you want to talk to each other, like no interrupting, using kind words, taking turns speaking.
It takes the pressure off of us to be the enforcers all the time.
Right.
And it gives them a sense of ownership,
Totally.
over how communication works in the family.
And it can be a fun activity. You could even make a poster. Or a family agreement that everyone signs, so it feels like a shared commitment.
I love that. The article also mentions how important it is to remember that every kid is different.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So what works for one might not work for another.
Absolutely.
We really have to pay attention to each child's personality and their communication style.
Some kids are really verbal and expressive, while others might process things more internally. Some kids respond to direct communication, while others need a more gentle approach.
So it's about being flexible and meeting each child where they are.
And it takes patience. We can't expect them to become, perfect communicators overnight.
Of course not.
There will be setbacks and misunderstandings and times when we, fall back into old habits.
That is so reassuring to hear.
Yeah.
It's a process, not a destination.
Yeah.
And, as much as we're trying to teach our kids about communication, I think they actually have a lot to teach us too.
Oh, absolutely. Kids have such a fresh perspective, and they can cut through all the clutter and just get to the heart of things. They haven't learned to filter their emotions or sugarcoat things as much as adults do.
It's refreshing.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like a wake-up call. They remind us to be more authentic and to express our feelings honestly and to listen with open hearts.
I think the big takeaway from all this is that communication is about way more than just words. It's about connection and empathy and understanding. It's really the foundation of any strong and healthy relationship, whether it's with our partners, our children, or even ourselves.
So well said. It's about creating a safe space where everyone feels like they can be themselves, express their needs, and know that they're heard and loved. And I think if we can do that, even imperfectly, we're setting our families up for success.
Absolutely. And remember, it's never too late to start making changes. Every interaction is a chance to practice these skills, to model healthy communication, and to strengthen those bonds that make families so special.
So true. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. We hope you found it insightful and maybe even a little inspiring. If you did, be sure to subscribe to the show for more deep dives into the things that matter most. And don't forget to share this deep dive with a friend. We could all use a little more connection in our lives, right? Until next time, keep those communication lines open